I had the question, how did I become Aaron? How did this happen? And immediately I relived that experience that I had previously had as a soul before I became Aaron. I relived that process of becoming this person that I am now.
Hello, and welcome to Spirit Travels, where we narrate the extraordinary experiences of people who have glimpsed the other side of death. My name is Maureen, and I will be your narrator on this journey. If you enjoy this content, please make sure to like and subscribe to support our channel. Now let's begin.
Hi everybody, this is Maureen again with Spirit Travels, and I have yet another interview with a special guest. His name is Aaron Green, and he's here to tell us about his incredible experience that he had when he was young. So you can go ahead, Aaron, and take it away whenever you're ready.
All right, yeah, a little bit about myself first. My name is Aaron Green. I live in Chesapeake, Virginia. I'm married with 3 teenage kids and a dog. I work as a electrical engineer. I'm a professional engineer. I work at Newport News Shipbuilding. That's the company that makes all of America's aircraft carriers for the Navy, and half the submarines for the U.S. Navy. So that's just a little bit about me. So my background, I was born in Durham, North Carolina, and when I was 2, my parents moved to Chesapeake, Virginia, and we lived in a house in suburbia. We had some dogs. I have an older brother who's about 2.5 years older than me, and I grew up going to a Catholic church, and I considered myself a Christian, but the Catholic Church never really appealed to me too much. But I definitely grew up with a Christian background and a basic understanding of God. One day, when shortly before my 6th birthday, I was playing with some friends in a neighbor's backyard with my brother and maybe 5 other neighborhood kids. And I'm not sure what happened, but I started to struggle to breathe. No matter what I did, I couldn't take a breath. And I was getting increasingly upset and frustrated that I couldn't breathe. And I started to walk away from my friends. And, I continued to struggle to breathe. And after, walking, I don't know, 20 or 30 feet away, something clicked. Something happened that I'm not quite sure how this happened. But the not being able to breathe triggered my consciousness to come out of my body. I left my body, and the essence of me, who I am, was basically hovering above my body, and I watched as my body fell to the ground, and I was just, I guess a free floating soul would be how to describe it. I was just kind of floating there, looking down at my body. It was kind of like waking up from a dream, only it's this life that is the dream, and I was waking up to a greater reality. And I was in I guess what I would describe as a plane of existence that's close to this physical plane, but at the same time different. A spiritual realm, I guess I would call it. And as I was floating there next to my body, I was still me, but I was gradually becoming more and more intelligent and aware. And I just fundamentally understood that I was something different than my body. I was this free floating soul, I guess. And a couple things happened very quickly. One was that my whole life, those 6 years, basically, flashed before me. Like I relived in detail all those 6 years in like a fraction of a second, almost. It happened very quickly. But a couple of things that I want to point out about that I think are very interesting is, I relived my experience and everything I had done and my emotions and feelings and all that stuff. But I also, I got to experience what my parents had felt, during our interactions during my life. I could not just feel my own feelings, but I could feel their feelings and how they had felt interacting with me. And a couple of things really stood out. One was my mom's love for me. That really, it seemed simultaneously small from the spiritual perspective and yet important and influential to me and to, I guess, the world as a whole. Like it was important that she loved me, and that really stood out. My father loved me too, but what really stood out was the from that spiritual perspective and reliving my life and feeling his feelings. What really stood out to me was the anger and frustration that he felt when I was a small child. Changing diapers, crying, how that would frustrate him and upset his plans and whatnot. But those two things really stood out. And about the frustration I had caused my parents as a baby was, it was also self-evident that I was a baby. I hadn't done anything, even though I had caused this frustration for my parents. I hadn't done anything wrong. I was just that's just what it is to have a baby, and that was all self-evident together. But anyway, that reliving my life only took like a fraction of a second, I guess. And then when that was done, my whole life, those 6 years seemed like I had done nothing. Like it felt like almost nothing, even though it was 6 years. And then I was just floating there by my body, and I noticed a bright light in the distance. And I knew it was very important, but I didn't go towards it or anything, although I could have. But I made the conscious choice to just stay floating there. And as I was floating there next to my body, I had the question, what am I? And I was able to like see myself floating there. And what I saw was essentially a round orb with a very faint glow to it. And that's what I was at that point. There was more to it than just like a round orb, but I can't really describe it. There was some kind of like spiritual insides, but I couldn't describe it. And I it's suffice it to say I was kind of a round orb floating there. And then I had another question, and as I would have a question, like the spiritual memory would replay for me, and the question would be answered. And it happened very fast, even though some of these questions had complicated answers. So one of the first questions I had after "What am I?" was, where did I start? Where did I come from? And the spiritual memory replayed for me. It's like I re-experienced something that I knew that I had experienced before, but as a human, I had completely forgotten those memories. And so I was basically taken back in this memory to when I had, I guess, started out as a soul. I was in a what I would call a group of souls, it was almost like a sea of souls. It was me as a round soul and hundreds or thousands of other souls, and we other in what I would call like a sea of light. It was very bright. We were all happy, but we were also immature. We didn't have any experience. We didn't really know anything, even though we had the capacity to access, I guess, deeper information. We didn't have any need to or any desire to. So I existed in this sea of souls with other souls, and we were all very happy, but immature. And periodically, some kind of treat or a gift would come down for all of us, and there was one for every soul. And as a kid, it reminded me of a cookie, but it wasn't a cookie. It was something spiritual that I couldn't explain, and it made us happy. We were all glad to get it, and there was one for everyone, and it was good. And one time, these gifts came down, and there was one fewer gift than there was souls, and everybody all the souls knew this, and I made the conscious decision. Okay, if there's one fewer than the number of souls, then I will pass on mine, because all these souls around me are just like me, and I know that they're going to want this. And so I gave up this gift so that everyone else could have one. And when the last soul got their gift, I was very gently pulled up out of this group of souls into some higher space. And I was continued to look down at all these souls that I had been with, and a higher level intelligence communicated with me, like telepathy or mind-to-mind communication, and said that, what I had done, get up this gift for others, was very, very important, and that, it was a good thing. And this higher intelligence communicated that it was God, and that I had been created, and I was important, and by I was important, I mean not just me, but all the other souls were also important, and that essentially God had prepared a wonderful existence for all of us, but we weren't yet ready to appreciate or enjoy all the wonderful stuff God had in store for us. That we needed to go through an experience to educate us and enlighten us in order to fully appreciate what God had prepared for us. And I asked God, couldn't you just change us and allow us to enjoy this? Make us however we're supposed to be, so that we can enjoy, whatever it is you've created for us. And God's response was that yes, absolutely, God could change me and everyone else to be like that, but that we were created with free will, and that free will was very important, and that we weren't created to be mindless servants of God, but we were to be able to freely choose what we needed to choose to be like God wanted us to be, which was loving, kind, compassionate, all the good godly characteristics of people associate with good things. So I said, okay, that I guess that makes sense. Again, I was coming from a place of ignorance, and I didn't really know anything, and God knew everything, so I accepted everything that God said. And God was going to ask me if I was willing to go on this difficult journey that was prepared for me, but that it would be extremely short. This difficult journey was going to be very short and worthwhile. It would be totally worth it. And then before I went on my way, God asked if I wanted to see God's face, and I thought, okay, sure. And so my attention was turned from all the souls I had been looking at that I had previously been with, and I was faced towards a giant sun, like looked like a huge sun. And as part of this huge sun was millions and millions of souls that were all kind of together in a large group, and these were like more advanced souls I had been with were, and some of these souls kind of like came to the surface, and they wished me well, and they had gone through this kind of difficult journey that I was about to go through, and they basically wished me well, and they said that I would join them when I was ready. And they were very happy, and they wanted me to join them because I would bring something to them as a group that would make them even happier than they were now. Like every soul would bring something that would increase the happiness of every other soul. So I was then asked if I was sure that I was willing to go through this difficult journey, and I agreed. And then it's like I was off, at great speed. I was rushed off somewhere else, and I needed to choose where I was going to start this difficult journey. And basically, I was shown countless, I guess, thousands of different planets that I could go to, and live a life that would give me the enlightenment I would need, and the education that I would need to grow myself into the more enlightened, more advanced person that I needed, or soul that I needed to be. And eventually, I saw Earth, and I don't know what it was, but something about this place. I was just sure that this was the place I wanted to go, and I picked Earth, and then I was asked if I was sure, and I said yes, I was sure, and then it's like I was off to Earth, and then that memory ended, and I was still floating there by my body, and I then had I was just floating aimlessly around, and I had another question, and keep in mind this entire reliving of this experience it happened almost instantaneous. It was very, very fast, even though it was a detailed memory. But I had the question, how did I become Aaron? How did this happen? And immediately I relived that experience that I had previously had as a soul before I became Aaron. I relived that process of becoming this person that I am now. I was with some guides that were helping me to make the choices necessary to start this life, and they had a person that they thought it would be a good fit for me to become, and they showed me this person, and something about the life they lived or their childhood. Um, it, I would become an extremely angry person. So I completely rejected this angry person that I could have become. I knew that some other soul would eventually choose that, and that it would be beneficial for them, but I completely rejected it. And so I was then taken to a different set of parents and shown that this was a possibility. And I saw the parents saw who they were, and I saw the options available to those parents of all the different kinds of kids they could have. And what really appealed to me was I wanted to be a girl because I didn't want to be. I felt like girls were less prone to violence, and I really didn't want to. I didn't want to become some kind of hurtful person. And I also saw that they could have a redheaded child, and I really liked the idea of being a redheaded girl because I saw that redheads were kind of rare, and that rarity appealed to me. Like I really thought that was neat. But I also saw that for whatever reason, my personality and the characteristics of this body, it just didn't quite match right, and I would never have I would never have a husband. I would never get married, and somehow it just it didn't quite work for me. So I thought about being a redheaded boy, but there just weren't any good options for a redheaded boy. I could, but nothing. It just didn't work out. So I took a look at the brown-headed boy options, and there was a whole bunch of those. I guess the genes were all there for that. And I started to look at some of the different options, and I really wanted to be a very good-looking person. Okay, I wanted to be like one of the best-looking people on the planet. Extremely attractive, and the genes were there. I could pick that, but I also was shown that I would become too promiscuous. I would have certain opportunities as a very good-looking person. I saw that there was very clearly a negative downside to that kind of lifestyle, and so I figured out that's not what I want to be, and so I basically lowered the attractiveness down to what I considered to be an attractive level, but not nothing extraordinary, nothing remarkable, and then very similar with intelligence. I wanted to be like the smartest person on the planet, extremely intelligent, and that was an option available to me. But I also saw that I would become arrogant, and I would look down on other people, and I would become an atheist, and I would kind of resent other people for not being very smart. And I saw that spiritually that was no good. That was not a good mindset to have. And so just like looks, I backed down the intelligence, something kind of intelligent, but nothing remarkable, nothing extraordinary. And I arrived at what I considered to be a good intelligence level, and I settled on that. So I picked the level of intelligence I thought was good, and it's safe to say I had a very good idea of what kind of body this was, and what it would be like. And I saw that as a consequence of these decisions I was making for the kind of body I wanted, was that as a teenager, I would have really bad acne. And although that wasn't something that was planned for or that I wanted, um, I also saw that it was from a spiritual perspective. Those couple of years of really bad acne seemed extremely short. Like it was almost like nothing to have 2 years of horrible acne. While it was difficult as a teenager, as a spirit planning out my life, it seemed almost trivial. And I also saw that it would help me progress, help me become more like the kind of person I wanted to become. And so I accepted that. It all seemed okay. And I also took a closer look at my parents. It's safe to say I had a very good understanding of what kind of people they were, what kind of parents they would be, issues my parents would have, what kind of people they were, and same with my brother. And I accepted all of it. All of it looked good to me. And I even I saw the names that my parents were looking at for a child. Like I knew there was maybe about 10 names that they were considering, and I could easily exert my will and help them pick the name that I would have. And the name Aaron Thomas Green, it really appealed to me for a number of reasons. And so I was able to get them to pick that name without too much effort. I even could have gotten them to pick other names, but there was no real reason to it, as the names that they already were thinking about were good for me. And my guides at the end, showed me all the decisions I had made and what kind of life this would look like, and the basic idea of what life would be, and the body that I was gonna have, and asked me if I agreed to it. And they also showed me that I would have my nose broken as a teenager, and I had to agree to that. Otherwise, it couldn't happen because it surpassed some level of difficulty. And so, for certain difficult experiences, like I would have to agree to them, otherwise they wouldn't happen. And I also saw that I would dislocate my shoulder, and then I would dislocate and break my other shoulder, and I had to agree to those. And so I agreed to all these parts of my life and things that were planned out for me in the body. And they asked me once again, are you sure about all this? And I agreed. I said, yes, I'm sure. And then I was off to start this life. And at that point, the memory ended, and I was back to just floating around next to my body.
Wow.
Then I had another question. I was thinking, okay, well, I know this life's going to end someday. What happens after this life ends? And I was shown a number of, how a number of different souls, what it's like for them after they live this life. And first, I was shown a really horrible place or form of existence that some souls had after life. I was shown that when souls transition outside of the body, the way they look is related to their inner nature, what kind of person they are. Here on Earth, we all kind of look, what we look like and what kind of person we are is almost unrelated. But great. When souls leave Earth, and they go back to being a spirit, the way they look is directly related to their own internal nature. And so if you have a really hateful, murderous internal nature, then you're going to look really ugly. But if you have a loving, kind, compassionate, serving personality, that those souls are very beautiful and attractive. And first I was shown some souls that were grotesque. They looked kind of like monsters. And there was hundreds or thousands of these souls in this place, and they were just fighting with each other constantly, doing everything they could to hurt each other. And when one of these souls would hurt another one, no matter how horrible the injury was, it would heal very quickly. So none of them could ever be permanently injured, and they would just they just kept fighting with each other and attacking each other and hurting each other, and they were all miserable, and they were filled with hatred, and it was just horrible. But eventually, one of these souls stopped fighting with the other souls, and when it stopped fighting, they're beings of light. I guess they were angels. I'm not sure, but one of these beings of light swooped down and picked up this soul who had freely chosen to stop fighting with the other souls, and they lifted him out of that horrible battle. And I was told that, there was a way for this soul to continue to progress upward, and that none of these souls was going to be trapped in this horrible state forever. That they would all, when they chose, they would have a chance to continue to evolve and become better and stop being like that. They none of them were stuck. And then I was shown another group of souls that existed in this state of darkness, where they couldn't really see anything, and they were all confused and didn't understand what was going on. And there was some higher level, happier souls that were there to help them. They had a way for these confused souls to continue to progress and move forward and become happier. But the confused souls in the darkness, they were mistrustful. They had a really difficult time accepting that another soul would be there to help them. Like that was kind of a foreign concept to them. But eventually I saw that one of these souls agreed to be helped by these higher level, happier souls. And so the confused soul went with the others, and they had a way for the soul to continue to progress. And I saw another group of souls that were living life similar to what we live on Earth, in some kind of realm with like buildings and street lights, and it looked kind of like an older city. But these souls were living like this, very similar to Earth, but they were much, much happier. And I was shown another place which was like a city of light, and the souls living there were extremely happy. And all the souls and all the buildings and roads and everything, it was almost like it was made of light. I guess I would describe it as a city of light. And I was shown another group of souls that were even happier. They were essentially just flying around, with each other, and somehow they were so happy they could barely contain it. They were just, you can't really describe the level of happiness of some of these souls, or the misery of some of the other souls, because it so far exceeds what we experience here on Earth. But there were a lot of different souls and their states after their life was over. I think people get in this mindset of heaven. Some people go to heaven, some people go to hell. But what I saw was that there was a full range of different outcomes for these souls based on what kind of person they had developed into, how loving they were, how kind they were. And no one forced any of these souls, any of these places. It's just kind of where they fit in and where they belong based on the kind of person that they had become. Anyway, after I saw the extremely happy souls, I returned to floating next to my body, and somehow it occurred to me that when I was done with this life, done with being Aaron, that I could go to. What I saw was that I would be going to this city of light where souls were very happy, and I was extremely excited about that and happy. And then I remembered that I would be able to see some friends again, and I don't know who these friends were, but it was extremely important to me, and I was really happy about that. And just when I had that realization that this future happiness awaited me, a being of light, an angel or some kind of high level soul, came at me very quickly and communicated with me, mind to mind communication. You are not to leave your body. It was like I was being rebuked. I had done something kind of wrong. I wasn't supposed to leave my body. The breathing difficulty that I had should not have triggered my soul to leave the body. And almost instantly, I was back in my body, and I stood up. And by this point, my brother had come over from the group of friends to see what was wrong with me, because from his perspective, my body was just laying there for, I guess, about 30 seconds. So he came to check on me, and when he saw me stand up, he then went back to the friends, and I went home. So I went home and tried to tell what had happened to my mom, but I was unable to. I just couldn't explain it. And at the time, I had a speech impediment. I had a lot of words or consonants and vowels I had trouble saying, and so I wasn't I wasn't a good talker to begin with. And then what had happened was so strange and outside of the ordinary that I couldn't really describe it to her. But I would think about this, what I had seen, like daily, for months, and try to figure out what I had seen. And after several months of thinking about this all the time, I was I had the guide that I had worked with communicated with me mentally. I didn't see this guide or anything, but I knew exactly who it was. They connected with me and communicated with me mentally, and basically said, "We're going to have to hide that memory that you have, because it's interfering with your life. It's preventing you. Uh, Basically, you've seen too much. You can't live life the way it's intended to be lived with the stuff you know about, and we're going to need to hide it from you." They couldn't force this change without my agreement. So I asked, why was this important? And they told me that one of the issues was that with this kind of knowledge, I could never develop faith, and that faith was very important. But my knowledge would prevent me from having faith, because like, if you already know it, you can't have any kind of you've already seen it, so there's no there's no effort to trust or believe in God if you already know about it, and that was a problem. So I asked for an explanation, and they explained it to me, but I couldn't understand what they were explaining. It was just like too complicated for me. But then they said, okay, just understand that faith is important. And I said, oh, yeah, okay, I agree. And they said, okay, and they were going to hide these memories from me, but that I would get them back someday when I was older. And so the memories were hidden from me, and I didn't think about this experience anymore as a kid. And I lived my normal life. I grew up, got a girlfriend, went to college, got married. We have 3 kids now. And about 10 years ago, I was reading a Newsweek magazine article about Eben Alexander. He's a neurosurgeon who had a near-death experience. And during his experience, he was brain dead. And he was hooked up to a bunch of monitors that showed that he was brain dead, but he had this, vivid near-death experience. And I was reading about this article, reading about his experience, and at that moment, reading the article, I kind of accepted, at a deeper level, that yes, God is real. I thought, hey, this is a really neat experience that this guy's sharing. It must all be true. Somehow, I accepted what he was saying, and when I accepted what he was saying, somehow it triggered something deeper, and my memories came back to me of what had happened to me when I was, almost 6 years old, and I spent a lot of time thinking about these memories that I had, trying to process them and understand what I had experienced. And after many years, I've reached kind of an understanding about what I've experienced, and I've read other people's experiences and tried to hear what other people have been through. And I think I've reached a place where I have a decent understanding of what I experienced. And here, 10 years later, I'm here talking with you.
Yeah, that's amazing. What a detailed experience you had. That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that, Aaron.
Yeah, thank you.
I have some questions, if that's okay with you, just general
Sure.
questions, and some that I wrote down that are more specific to your particular experience. You
Okay.
kind of already addressed, you didn't have a physical body. You said you were kind of like a light orb, or like a spiritual kind of conscious something, right?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. When I left my body, I didn't have like a spiritual body per se. I was just kind of a round orb of consciousness. That's how I saw myself.
And that wasn't distressing to you, obviously.
Oh no, it was
No.
it was pleasant, actually. It was I was kind of glad to be out of this body. I had a healthy 6-year-old body, relatively normal, no problems or anything like that. But even so, it was so much more pleasant to exist as this disembodied orb than to exist as a human being. Like, it was much better, and I was more intelligent, more aware. It was just a happier state of being. Is how I would describe it. Not that I'm trying to rush to again, but just that, no worries about.
Yeah, all in due time. Have you seen the 3D
Yeah.
animation movie Soul? Have you seen that movie? There's a 3D animation movie called
Oh
Soul.
yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah.
Yes.
When you were talking about how pre-Earth you guys were a whole bunch of souls, and then you were plucked and you got to choose where you went, that reminded me so
Right.
much of that movie, and it made me think maybe someone who's involved in that movie had a near-death experience. What did you think when
Yeah.
you saw that
Well,
movie?
yeah, I felt like there was a lot of parts that I was really like great. They from my perspective, they got this right. This is a really cool movie. Some of the parts I didn't agree with as much, but a lot of it I really felt like, wow, they've really connected with a deeper truth here, and a lot of what they're saying I think lines up with what's really going on.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah,
interesting.
that was
So
my take on it.
yeah, like I my personal like view of the world is I come from a Christian perspective. The Bible doesn't really say too much about where or how God makes each individual soul. So that's kind of still a bit of a mystery to
Right.
me. So it's interesting always when someone comes and kind of tries like to fill in the blanks. So I find that really interesting.
Right.
On that topic, how has this experience affected your faith?
I guess it's really focused for me, or giving me a focus on what I consider to be most important, which is that people develop themselves through their own choices to be more loving, more kind, more compassionate, more honest, more helpful to others, more trustworthy. That people freely choose to become better people. And Christian, I consider this lines up pretty closely with what Jesus said. Jesus was. Someone asked Jesus what's most important, and he says, well, love God and love your neighbor, and that lines up, right with what I saw, that loving God and loving your neighbor is very important. So
Amen. Yeah, because you
for me,
talked
it's
about the faith.
it's allowed me to focus on that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I was just filling in the blanks because you mentioned how it's important to love other people, and even when you were choosing your kind of earth journey, how it was kind of chosen strategically in order to maximize that, right? To be loving and have all these
Breaking.
like traits. Your experience does fill both of those aspects, because you talked about having characteristics that line up with goodness and godliness, and you also talked about how the spirit guide didn't want to tell you everything because faith was important. So loving God, loving people. So I thought that was really interesting. Did
Okay.
you see anything when you were, because you said that you got to see kind of your life and choose the person you're going to be? Have you seen anything that hasn't happened yet?
Yeah, kind of.
Oh, yeah.
But what I saw was not like world events, but what I saw was individual people. What
Mm.
their life like when they're done with this life. I got a perspective on what things would be like for a lot of these different people,
Wow.
and none of it's like horrible or almost like that based on the kind of people I see for most of this. Um, I had some kind of inkling to how they're doing with their spiritual progression, and what kind of state they would in when they were done with it. So it's kind of interesting, but ironically, it's like exactly what you would expect, that the loving, kind, compassionate people who are working to help others, like they're doing pretty well, and the hateful, mean people who are cruel to other people, they're not doing well, and everywhere in between, and there's a big range, and it's not black or white, like you're either this or that. It's a whole spectrum of levels where people are, and um, I just fits my natural understanding,
Mm.
my understanding
Yeah.
now based on my experience.
Even when you were talking about the different levels, like the spectrum, I think even as
Right.
a Christian, from my perspective, we also see it as a spectrum in a certain extent. Like there's levels to heaven and levels to hell. So it is in a
Right.
sense, it's a spectrum. But yeah.
I was going to say, as a Christian, if you actually look at what Jesus said, which I hate to say it, but a lot of Christians, I don't think they ever do this. He described a couple things like you know, as you measure to others, it will be measured back to you. There's something like that. You know, the greatest in the kingdom of God, the least among you, something like that. Both of those kind of point towards, you know, different states for different people. And I think if you really look at some of the stuff Jesus actually said, you could get a better understanding of what's going on.
Yeah, I agree. Amen to that. You said at one point that God asked you if you wanted to see his face. And then you said you saw like a sun kind of thing. You saw like the sun and with like billions of like light beings of different levels. Did you actually see God's face?
Yeah.
Yeah. What did it look like?
Yeah. What I saw was God's face was millions and millions of people's faces. Like we're all a little piece of God. And if you really want to know God, you got to understand that every one of us together, you know, all of us together make up God. You know, and when I say all of us, I don't just mean on Earth. I mean the whole universe. And you put all that together, that's just you know, put it all together and it's God. And so the face I saw was millions of people's faces.
Interesting.
You know, all together as one cumulative entity. Cool. And I have a picture that I'll email you that I've created. And you know, I have the art. I'm an engineer. I'm a kind of a science guy. I have the artistic ability of a carrot. So please, understand.
Engineers are artistic.
Not this one, but I've tried to recreate. I've tried to recreate what I saw, and hopefully you can just show that so people understand what I'm trying to explain.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely share that. That sounds really beautiful. I mean, it's hard to visualize. It's super hard to visualize. I'm not going to lie, but it's because I've never seen anything like that.
No,
I can only imagine.
So I've tried to create, you know, a visualization just to give you an idea. But please remember, I'm not a good artist.
I'm sure it's great. Yeah, I'm excited to see it. Next question.
Okay.
And this one is actually really interesting to me. When you went to the other side, or when you died temporarily, were you able to? Well, I guess in your case it's a little different because did you were, as you were having these experiences, you were still on Earth beside your body, right? You didn't like leave the Earth, did you?
No, I don't think I actually left Earth, but memory was almost like reliving an experience that was somewhere else, and it was an extreme detail. So it was like I didn't actually leave Earth, but the experience that I had was somewhere else. So it kind of felt like being somewhere else, even though it was just reliving a memory, and spiritually re-experiencing that was much more detailed and real than if you recall a memory from your own experience as a person.
And when you experienced the other side, were you able, especially when you actually left the realm, were you able to see, hear, or feel the people who are still alive on Earth?
When I had the, I guess what's called a life review, and I relived my life, I could feel what my parents had felt, and experience what they had experienced as it related to me, and then I could see my friends who were still playing. I could definitely see them, but other than that, I didn't really see anyone living or doing anything else. That wasn't really the focus of that just wasn't what I focused on.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Because a few people have said that they haven't focused on that, and that's why. But some people say if they wanted to, they probably could have. And the reason I'm asking, I'm just asking because when people pass away, and I've had people pass away in my family within the last year, a few people, we always feel that their presence is still felt with us, like that they're still around, they could still hear us and stuff. So I'm always asking people who've been to the other side, are you able to hear people? Are you able to see people? Are you able to, or is it like you're completely separate from the life that you had here?
Yeah, what I would expect for most people is that it's entirely up to them. It's entirely their choice. And I think what most people would do is they would take a look at their friends, their family, their body, for as long as they want. And I think what would be typical would be from a couple hours to, I don't know, maybe a couple days, depending on the person, that they would kind of hang around a little bit and see what was going on, and kind of check on their loved ones. And then most likely they would realize that, there's something much more important waiting for them, and that all their loved ones see them again. And from a spiritual perspective, it seems like, 20 years is almost like nothing. It seems like a lot less than a human 20 years does. So I think usually they're going to realize, hey, my loved one is, eventually they're going to join me, and let me go check out this better stuff. But I think, like you're saying, probably souls, I would expect that a lot of people would visit their loved ones before moving on. When my grandmother passed away, back, I guess about 30 years ago, I was in my apartment at the time, and I didn't know that she had passed away, but I really felt like that she had come to see me. I didn't see anything or hear anything, but I really felt her presence. And I really agree with what you're saying, that I think a lot of souls do visit loved ones.
That's cool. And you said something that I never really thought of, which is that time works differently after death. So for somebody who's passed away, maybe they're thinking like, oh yeah, I'm going to see them in 5 minutes. They're not like, oh, I'm going to miss them, I'm not going to see them. They're like, oh, I could see them anytime. I'll see them in 5 minutes, kind of thing. So for them, it's different. It's harder for us here because time is slower here. But
I mean, the way I've come to understand it is that, in my opinion, for God, there is no time. God is everywhere. Everything. I can't really describe it, but God is more timeless. And as you get towards Earth, you're more and more encumbered by time, to where we are just, complete slaves to it. Yeah,
that makes sense, and I agree with that. It's hard for us to conceptualize timelessness. Like we can't even. It doesn't resonate with us in our physical, our materialistic world. But what was the most surprising revelation that you had due to your near-death experience, or since your near-death experience?
I guess the initial surprise when these memories were returned to me, it was like, oh yeah, I had this experience. It was almost like, how could I forget this? Except I knew how I forgot it. But just to, when I first got those memories back, that was really a pleasant surprise, I guess. Like for me, I consider that one of the best days of my life is getting those memories back, and getting what I consider to be a much better understanding of life and death, and what's going on here, and how we're supposed to live.
Have you shared your experience with your children, your spouse? Like, do you share your experience with people, or is this something that you don't talk about very often?
I try to share my experience with anyone who will listen, without badgering anybody or trying to, force my experience on them. Yeah, I tell friends, coworkers, family, anyone who will listen to me. I try to, share my story without ever getting to the point where I'm pushing it on anybody. If they're not interested, I stop. Usually people aren't too familiar with near-death experiences, so they're confused by what I'm saying. They usually look at me a little bewildered. Usually it's kind of like a mildly unpleasant experience for me to try to share this experience, because while people are generally polite, it's kind of an awkward exchange. But I feel that sharing these experiences is very important, and that of the millions of people who have had an experience like me, I think it's really important to share those with everyone else, so that they can hopefully develop an understanding of life and God, and why we're here. So yes, I've tried to tell anyone who will listen.
That's awesome. I think that's important. I also think it's important to share these experiences. I think the message is probably the most important thing that we will ever hear during our time on Earth. Because like you said, and I believe it, that our time on Earth is short. We're here for a reason. And I think a lot of people, we just forget. We forget. We think we have all the time in the world, and we forget that there's important things, more important things than the material world.
Yeah, and also I think a lot of people when they're trying to understand God, they're very focused on some 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 year old text, and they completely miss that there's an excellent understanding of God from people all around them. And if you just listen to what some of these millions of people have experienced, you can actually get a better understanding of God than you can by reading some of these many thousands of year old texts.
I think it's also a situation where you kind of talked about this, and I agree with this, and the Bible also agrees with this, that within what we call like Christians would call the body of Christ, which is like the body of souls, the group of souls, we're all here with different talents, different perspectives, different experiences, and we all have something to contribute and some way to love each other and to love God, and we all do it in a different way. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's true too. How has this experience impacted your life, or the memory of the experience, or now, but how has this experience and the memory of it impacted your life?
I think my experience has allowed me to appreciate what's important in life, which is that we acknowledge the existence of God and understand that God is all around us, and that God is wonderful and terrific. All the great things you want to be true about God, all the good, and that horrible stuff, that's just not the case. And then also to genuinely try to be a better person, to try to be more loving, kind, compassionate, honest, to help other people where I can. I think my experience has allowed me to focus on being a person. That's how I think it has changed.
That's awesome. And I think that is a great takeaway for all of us that we need to constantly be reminded of. I know definitely for me every single day. And thank you so much, Aaron, for all the time that you've spent and for, sharing your experience, sharing your wisdom. I could tell that you have a lot of wisdom. Like when you're talking, I'm like, wow, I never thought of that. Wow, I never thought of that. Wow, that makes so much sense. So
thank you.
I appreciate that so much. And I appreciate you coming on and talking about this.
It's been my pleasure. I appreciate you letting me come on here and share my experience. I really admire what you're doing with this channel, and I appreciate you sharing not just my experience, but everyone else's experience that you've been talking to. Just getting those experiences out there for the world. I think it's really important work that you're doing, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. And I'm always amazed by how many experiences corroborate. Like, it's kind of incredible that so many experiences corroborate in different ways. So it's beautiful. It kind of paints like a mosaic, like a picture, right?
Oh yeah, that's how I see it. A TV is made of thousands of little or millions of little pixels, and I see it as every near-death experience or other spiritual perspective is like one pixel. And the more we put together, the more clear of a picture of God and life that we can get.
Mm-hmm. God is amazing. He's incredibly complex, and he's just incredible. I mean, I was just thinking about that today, and I was thinking about the world and the mountains and the oceans and the deserts and all this beautiful landscape, and then the planets and the universe and the galaxies. And God created all of that. So imagine how much more incredible He is. So I'm always in awe when I start to think about it.
Yeah,
I feel
and that's
very
just
humbled.
that's just our physical realm.
Yeah.
The way I understand it, the spiritual realm is so much bigger than this physical realm.
Wow.
It's just kind of mind-boggling.
It is. I get chills. Like, I get like goosebumps thinking about it. It's pretty incredible. So I thank you again. I look forward to the next life, and I really hope that everyone I get to speak with on this channel that we get to meet again in the next life. That'll be so fun.
Yeah, I look forward to meeting you in the afterlife. And
that'll be fun. Yeah.
Thank you for listening. If you have had an NDE that you would like to share, please email us at travelsinthespirit@gmail.com. Until next time, God bless.